Hello, everyone. I see some people are trickling in. Thank you all for joining us today for our webinar. We're excited to have you. Hope you all are staying warm in this cold weather. But looking forward to today's presentation. But before we hand it off to Phil, I'm going to go over just some quick housekeeping things. So let me dive right in so we can get to our presentation. So want to highlight for you all some upcoming events. Even though February is a short month, we have a lot of things going on with Middle Tennessee SHRM. You can scan this QR code here. It'll take you directly to our events page, but you can see we've got a chapter meeting. We have our mentorship committee leading an event. We have a really highly anticipated webinar on immigration coming up as well, and then an emerging professionals event as well that is virtual. So definitely check those things out. Go to our webpage and get in front of other members and get connected. As always, so just want to highlight here, you will be earning SHRM and HRCI credits for today's event. All of those credits will be, or at least those credit numbers will be sent to you via email, along with today's recording as well as the presentation deck. So be on the lookout for those because we'll be sending those to you via email. And then without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Phil Strazula. He is here to present to us from Select Software Reviews. I'm excited to hear from him. I know technology is everywhere. It's ever changing. So I'm excited for him to share his expertise and get your questions answered. So Phil, I will hand it over to you.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me. I really appreciate being here. Let me share my slides here. A quick background on me. So I used to actually be on the board of the Northeast Human Resource Association, which is another SHRM chapter up here in the Boston area, where I'm based at. And I've been in the HR space for a bit over a decade. Started off doing fractional work. My biggest claim to fame there is helping a company scale from 300 to 3,000 employees in about 15 months. I bought a ton of tools, ATSs, HRISs, payroll, EOR, performance management, learning management, everything in between. And I just realized that the space is so dynamic, and realistically, the vast majority of HR teams are too busy to become experts on HR technology. And so about 8 years ago, I started Select Software Reviews. Our mission is to help HR find and buy the right HR technology. And we have reviews on our website. The number one way that we help is we have this team of advisors that people can use for free. I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but basically you can just talk to them and be like, hey, here's how big our company is. We need to move to an all-in-one, or moving off PEO, or we're moving from spreadsheets to an actual system. And here's our budget. And like, what system should we actually look at? And then we have a GPT version of that too, actually, that's trained on 1,000 conversations with HR professionals. This presentation is really going to be everything that I've learned about buying HR tech. I've bought well over $1 million worth of HR tech and dozens of systems myself personally. And then at SSR, we've helped tens of thousands of companies buy HR technology. And that could be, HCM, HRIS, ATS, whatever. So that's sort of my background and where I'm coming from here. And this is really going to be like super tactic based. I want everybody to walk away from here with like actual tools you can use. I know it's a small group. I would love it if people ask questions in the chat. I'll keep my eye on the chat throughout this presentation. And if you have a question and you're like, hey, Phil, like, I don't understand what you're talking about, or I disagree with you, or here's how I've done it differently. I love that. And so please leave that in the chat. I would love this to be more of an interactive discussion. We also have a giveaway here coming up in about 20 minutes. And hopefully this is just super useful for you. I will put into the chat my LinkedIn URL as well, in case anybody is looking to expand their network. And I'm actually just curious in the chat if anybody wants to share. Have you ever heard of our organization prior? Have you ever seen me maybe give a presentation before? I did 60 webinars last year. Or have you ever heard of People Ops Jobs, which is our HR job board? That's another kind of thing that I wouldn't say famous for, but that people know about. I'd be curious to know if anybody's heard of select software reviews or people ops jobs or maybe myself. Um, Jennifer, nope, but I'm new here. Okay, well, welcome. I've seen you present recently an HRCI presentation. Hey, Layla, that's awesome. Thanks for um, coming out today. Valerie, no, but interested to learn more. Amazing. And Layla, the good thing is, I don't know which HRCI presentation that was, but this will be totally different from that. It'll be a different format too, because those are typically panel where I'm really just going to go through a presentation today and going to get to the tactics. So thank you all so much for participating in the chat. I really appreciate it. Anybody else who's has an opinion about us or have heard or not heard about us, let us know. And if you want, feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn through that URL. Always love to expand my network. What are you going to get from today? Actionable strategies, advice on how do we find and buy the right software? How do we deal with internal stakeholders? I think that's one of the biggest things. The CFO, I always think about this cold-hearted CFO that lives in a spreadsheet, doesn't care about anything but numbers. And how do we convince that person to say yes to what we want to do? From a project perspective, in this case, an HR tech perspective, I'm going to share some resources to simplify the vendor search, to stay organized. How do you run demos appropriately? How do you make it so that you're managing salespeople versus they're managing you? And how do we think about return on investment? I'm going to go through some actual calculations and math. And again, I'm going to look at the chat throughout this entire presentation. So please, please, please leave your questions, your comments, your insights, even your answers. I know a decent amount from doing this for a long time and focusing on HR tech. What a thing to focus on. I never, 15 years ago, if you're like, hey, Phil, what are you going to be doing in 2026? I probably wouldn't have said, I'm going to be extremely deep on the HR tech ecosystem. But here I am, and I honestly love it. So the first tactic that I want to talk about is what I call the HR Tech Roadshow. So this is a playbook to get internal stakeholder buy-in around your new HR tech investment. So if I want to buy a new performance management system, I need to make sure that there are lots of stakeholders bought into this decision before I start spinning my wheels. Because I've done this personally. I see a lot of people do this, unfortunately, where you're already so busy in HR to begin with. We actually had a new team member join us on Monday in a marketing role, and they don't really know much about HR. And I was explaining to this person about HR, and I'm like, here's the deal. Like every company, basically, and this is horrific, but it's true. They view HR as a cost center. And so there's the work of like four people that they give to one person. And there's all these fire drills every single day where you've got employee relations issues. And so these strategic things kind of get pushed to the bottom. And I think that this is why it's so important to have these tactics in your toolkit to be successful, especially when it comes to internal stakeholder management. So let's get into it. The reality check, I just like to call it out like the elephant in the room sometimes on this HR tech buying stuff is that many organizations still think of HR and talent acquisition, people operations, whatever you want to call it, as a cost center. And so your cold-hearted CFO is like, this doesn't make us money, and therefore let's decrease this budget as much as we humanly can. And that's the mentality that I think a lot of C-level boards have towards us. And so we have unfairly this added burden relative to somebody in marketing asking for a new tool, somebody in sales asking for a new tool to really prove ROI. And what people want is a big result with a very little investment. The the good news is it's there and we can show it. And I'm even going to walk through some math in about 40 minutes to kind of showcase how we can do this in a very convincing way. But to get buy-in, I think what a lot of my peers miss is you have to start talking and thinking in terms of EBITDA and revenue and gross profit and all of these things that your average CFO cares about, your average board member cares about, versus things like, hey, we want to increase the employee experience. We want to have better onboarding. We want people to last longer in an organization. Like those things lead to ROI, but you need to bridge it because I think a lot of executives don't have the vision to understand, oh, like if we have a much better candidate experience, that's going to lower our cost per hire or our time to fill, and therefore that increases revenues. The good news is that with the right technology, the reporting that you're probably getting asked for on a very regular basis becomes a lot more possible and easy. This is especially true for all-in-one systems. We see a lot of companies now moving from point solutions. You've got all these disaggregated data sources of truth to one system that has everything in it. And that can be a massive game changer. Yes. If you'd like to ask a question, just raise your hand or leave something in the chat. I'm going to monitor the chat this whole time. So please, if you're, if you're like, really, should we move to all-in-one solution? I don't know about that. Like, ask that question. Um, the right HR software also, it makes everybody's lives better. And this is employees, it's hiring managers, it's the C-level, it's your team members. And I think that's something we can all feel really, really good about. I think conversely, the wrong software obviously is a disaster and you get all these questions and frustrated people. And the amazing thing about this kind of next generation of HR technology tools is that automation is becoming a reality. And automation can be all this AI stuff. A lot of these tools have AI built in for, building job descriptions or running analytics on unstructured data or whatever. But even the if this, then that automation, if we post a job and we get 300 applicants, close the job because we have enough applicants. Those sorts of things in the right ATS, HRIS, HCM are extremely possible. And those sorts of things save your team money and also headspace and frustration because they're just the rote tasks we have to keep on top of. It's all very accomplishable to get the right stuff, the right technology. I'm going to give you all the secrets. So, for this HR Technology Roadshow, what I actually do is I put together an extremely short presentation to give to each of the key stakeholders in my organization. So maybe it's the CFO, maybe it's the CEO. Every organization is different. It might be that the head of PR has a lot of power. It might be head of marketing, whatever the case may be. And in this presentation, we're basically mapping out what's the current pain point that we are experiencing. And this pain can be Glassdoor reviews, it can be sort of anecdata. We've heard this, we keep seeing this. It should ideally also be something that impacts the business. We can't hire enough salespeople to hit revenue targets. What are we going to do about it? So what's the change that's going to happen? What does that future state look like? And then what is the return on investment from this future state? So let's say we have a nasty looking career site that doesn't show our employee value propositions. There's no employer branding elements to it. It's not attracting and converting the right people. That means our time to fill is super long. That means our cost per hire is long. That's increasing our costs. That's decreasing our revenue because we can't get butts and seats to actually do the work. What are we going to do about it? We're going to move to an employer branding focused applicant tracking system where we can have employee testimonials, where we can have better analytics, we can have mobile apply, etc. And the future state is that cost per hire decreases, time to fill decreases, and here's how it shows up in the P&L. When you run this roadshow, you got to target the right people in your organization. It's probably 3 to 4 people that you want to have these one-on-one conversations with, 15 to 30 minutes each. And you're basically just like, hey, here's the pain. Here's what we're going to do about it. Here's the future state. You're getting their buy-in like, yeah, that sounds like a great idea. So that it's worth it to go find that new ATS, to go find that people analytics platform. You're also getting feedback, but you really want to control the conversation. You don't want the CEO to start being like, well, here's how I would do it, and blah, blah, and they're taking up 80% of the airtime. That's why you have this structured presentation where it's like this, versus here's an idea and it's a conversation, and then that person starts talking at you because they have ideas. And then after you have this initial conversation, you're maintaining the momentum. You're saying, hey, we narrowed the short list down to 4 ATSs. Hey, we met with the ATSs. Now it's down to 2. We're in contract negotiations. We got 15% off the contract value. We're implementing. We're live. We're seeing ROI. These quick emails that take 15 or 20 minutes to put together and draft to this core group, they are so key because throughout this process, you're going to need help along the way. sort of a bonus tip here is what I call basically a cross-functional buying committee. So you can do this roadshow to the kind of keep people in your organization and then keep them abreast of what's going on. One other kind of way of taking this a step further is asking the organization who else cares about this problem that we have. So maybe our problem is we're not doing a very good job with employer branding. And the TA team or the HR team is going to work on this over the next quarter or two, and we're going to come up with a solution. Ideally, there's three or four people across the organization who are like, you know what, I worked on something like this prior, or I have strong opinions about this, or I want to help out on this. And they sort of become your board of advisors throughout this project. So you can get their ideas. Diversity of opinions leads to better ideas. And maybe it's, hey, we don't need a new ATS. Maybe it's we need a designer to update our career website, or we need actually just the employee testimonials aspect, or we actually need to really focus on Glassdoor. So you get better ideas. The more important part is that you get the juice to get the budget, to get things implemented. All of these steps along the way that are hard because internal stakeholders can slow you down. You have these amazing people in your corner. I'll tell a quick story. So I mentioned this company that went from 300 to 3,000 employees in 15 months. We had, I was working in talent acquisition role, basically doing strategy, setting up systems, setting up the hiring funnels. And we had this opportunity to do a big PR splash. So our head of PR at like 5 o'clock on a Tuesday was like, hey, good news. Tomorrow morning, we're going to be in all these um, journals or all these publications in the Charlotte area. We're going to announce that we're going to hire 1,000 veterans in the Charlotte area over the next 5 years. And I was like, oh, that's really great. But, somebody who reads about us in the newspaper, they're not an active job seeker. They're not going to have a resume. They're not going to be able to apply into our ATS. So they're just going to like see us and then we're not going to get their information. We're never going to talk to them again. So we've done all this. We literally done like the full HR Tech Roadshow with the CEO, the CTO, the head of brand, etc. And so in like 3 hours, we were able to get a landing page live with two testimonials from veterans at our company and a form that somebody could fill out for becoming a future employee of this company. And you just have to put your name, your email, and you could add your LinkedIn URL. You could add your resume if you had one. And we captured hundreds and hundreds of people's emails and information that way. And we ended up hiring dozens of those people. And our cost per hire was like $5,000. So we saved six figures by being able to spin up that landing page in a few hours to meet the opportunity of that PR buzz. And we were really only able to do that because we have the internal buy-in, because we've done the HR Tech Roadshow. And so we texted the CTO and said, hey, we need to get a landing page live. They said, send us the HTML. We went to the marketing team and said, hey, we need the HTML. They said, send us what you need. And then we'd done the EVP work. So we sent them a few testimonials and boom, it was live. So having this foundation is just like unbelievably critical to even these one-off opportunities, let alone the longer projects around buying new systems. Um, yeah, what's the payoff? I mean, cross-functional senior buy-in, it means that the budget battles are winnable and perhaps not as prolonged. Think about your internal stakeholder buying committee. These are people who are raising their hand. Hey, I want to help out on the employer brand, even though I'm in the marketing function or the sales function or whatever. That's somebody who's taking on extra work. They care. They're probably sort of a gunner. They're probably viewing the organization as a rising star, or they want to be, and that's why they're taking on these extra projects. And so when you go to the CFO and say, hey, I need an extra $50,000 to buy a new ATS because our existing one is horrific, they're going to be able to sit around the table and say, yeah, and by the way, like I'm on this too, and it just helps. Um, I think also HR technology, it's a little bit unique in that many times most people in the organization are touching it. Think about performance management system. Everybody in the organization is logging into the system. Think about an HRIS. Think about most ATSs. That makes it harder. That makes it much harder. Head of sales buys a new CRM, sales team uses it. You train the sales team, like that's it. So implementation is a lot messier and it has a lot more risk. Internal communications is key. Why are we using this? Reinforcing it with stories, with norms over the time of rollout. And it helps if you have communication nodes that are outside of HR. So if you have that person who helped you out with the project, who's in marketing, who's in sales, reinforcing it to their team and the rest of the organization, that's just going to help on having a successful implementation. I want to I'll just pause here for 2 seconds and say, again, if you have questions, comments, thoughts, please leave them in the chat. I'll be monitoring the chat because I know I am zipping through like a decent amount of stuff here, and I just want to make sure everything's clear. And if it's not, let me know. And we have a small group, so like don't feel like you're sort of like hogging the airways. If you have a question, probably somebody else does too. Let's talk about vendor research, which is always challenging. I think that there's a number of pitfalls in terms of vendor selection that we see very commonly. So, a lot of people, and honestly, this is probably more like your CFO does this a lot, is like, let's just go with this vendor because I've known them for 30 years. And sometimes that's the right vendor. Sometimes that's a really bad solution. And they have bad customer service and an outdated product. A lot of the best solutions on the market didn't exist 30 years ago. They weren't around pre-SaaS. Like it's just like they weren't even around 15 years ago. And so have an open mind and do all the work that I'm talking about today to make it so that your C level has an open mind too. I did this presentation a few weeks ago and somebody was like, our CFO just said we're buying ADP and that's that. And that's tough. And ADP can be the right system for some people, but it's the wrong system for a lot of people. And you really need to do the work to convince somebody. And that's what this HR Tech Roadshow is about. That's what the internal stakeholder buy-in is about. That's what the ROI calculator is about that we'll get to in a second. We've seen people buy software or not because of branding. Like, I don't like pink. I don't like brown. I like pink. I like brown. We all on a conscious or not level are taking in that data. And like, that's why companies choose certain colors. I would probably not make that like part of your actual decision criteria or the reason. Um, I think a lot of people rely on benefit brokers and other trusted advisors. And the reality is, I've never talked to a benefit broker who knows much about HR tech. I've known a lot who play golf with sales reps from ADP and Paylocity, and they recommend them, but it's just like it's outside their wheelhouse. And so benefit brokers are amazing resource, and like I'm not hating on them. I'm trying not to. But I think that a lot of times we ask people who are trusted advisors and they want to help. So they want to give recommendations, but they don't always give the best recommendations. And then a lot of times people just go with the cheapest option. Sometimes the cheapest option is the best for you. Sometimes it's good enough. But sometimes the total cost of ownership is much, much higher than the sticker price because it's the wrong solution. Here's a really good tip to save you a lot of time. So when you start demoing HR software solutions, you're going to sign up for demos and there's going to be some like 24-year-old salesperson that reaches out and is like, hey, like, can we do like a discovery call or can we set up a time to chat? And they basically just want to know, like, are you going to waste our time? Because so many people waste salespeople's time and time is money in sales. And so there's this like junior level of person who probably has a title SDR, BDR, that's just going to try to figure out, do you have BANT? Which is, do you have the budget? Do you have the authority? Are you like the actual person who's like going to make a decision here? Do you have a need or are you just like bored? Some people just like do demos. Um, and do you have a timeline? Like, is this like a 2029 thing or like, are you actually going to buy software? Because if it's 2029, then I'm not going to put you in touch with our senior sales rep. What I usually do when I get those emails from the SDRs is I'm just like, look, I have BANT. Um, you know, here's why we're switching off. Here's when we want to do a buy. I'm the one that's making the decision, and budget is sort of like implied. I actually don't want to talk about what my budget is because then you might raise your price on me. But I can skip that first meeting and say like, I just want to get to the demo. I don't want to do a discovery call. Let's just go, right? I'm too busy. I've got a million things going on. Okay, so here's what we do at SSR. We have basically a cheat code for everything that I'm talking about, especially vendor selection. So if you're looking for a new system. So this could be we're moving off a PEO, we're moving off spreadsheets. We've got all this random stuff. We're trying to go to an all-in-one. Maybe we have a good HCM, but we need an LMS, performance management, ATS. We've got international employees. We need an EOR. Whatever the case may be, our team of advisors is standing by. They're free. They're rated 4.9 stars. Organizations like MIT, the Colts, Chip City, Frank and Eileen, many, many others. It's amazing. Like, we're working with Nike now, which I'm just like, what? Use our vendors, or sorry, use our HR software advisors. You can sign up through this QR code to talk to them. Again, it's free. There's no obligation. They're not going to like steal your information or something like that. And you can just get some feedback. You could get your short list. Hey, I'm looking for HCMs. We're nonprofit. We're 100 employees. We're, whatever you are. What vendor should I even be looking at? We have pricing data that nobody else has, etc. So you can scan that QR code, or I'm going to put a link in the chat to make it super simple for you to sign up. And what's really nice is that we have this special offer going this quarter. So last quarter we supported the Boston Food Bank, and every organization that we helped, we gave them $50 gift card, and they could do whatever they want with it. Most people, did stuff for their team, and then we donated $50 to the Boston Food Bank. I live in Massachusetts. I live in Boston. I live 10 minutes away from it. And 1 in 3 families are food insecure. And Boston Food Bank, for every $50 you donate, it's like 67 meals or something. Like it's crazy. And they, there's people that match it, like New Balance, et cetera. So it's just like an amazing organization. This quarter, we're supporting Rosie's Place. So March 8th is International Women's Day. Rosie's Place is another amazing Boston nonprofit. If you grew up in this area, you grew up volunteering at Rosie's Place. I remember like knitting hats for the women at Rosie's Place. It's a women's shelter. So they help over 13,000 women every year. And for every HR team that we help, we're going to give you a $50 Amazon gift card. You go do whatever you want with it. I recommend doing something for your team, but go crazy. And we're going to donate $50 to Rosie's Place. And what that does is it gets 3 women and their family groceries for 11 days. So Rosie's Place does an amazing job of, hey, you got out of a bad relationship, a whole number of scenarios. We're going to help you get back on your feet. We're going to give you a place to stay. We're going to give you food, and this helps contribute to that. So it's an amazing organization. I think you should use Advisor no matter what because it's free. It's rated 4.9 stars. Every single day we get notes from people saying, thank you so much. I didn't know where to start when I was buying my new HR software system. So you should definitely use it anyways. But this is just an added incentive and honestly something we can feel really good about. If you connect with me on LinkedIn, you'll see today I literally posted a picture of me in front of the Boston Food Bank, and it felt good to give that money. I'm not going to lie. So we're just going to keep supporting charities. But yeah, and please, if there's somebody in your network who needs help buying software, they want to move off of a system or whatever, send them the link that I put in the chat, and we would absolutely love to help them. In terms of staying organized, I mean, buying software is so hard because you got everything else going on, and usually it can be a process that gets drawn out. I highly recommend having a spreadsheet, and this QR code will take you to a spreadsheet template that you can use to just keep track of the vendors. So I usually put in the columns all the vendors that I'm talking to. On the left side, I put down the functionality. I put my must-haves, my nice-to-haves, and then for each demo, I write down, does this vendor have this? Is there any commentary? Do they have this integration? Yes or no? Is it API or CSV? What's sort of like the color commentary on each of these? Because a lot of times it's not very binary of do they have this? Yes or no? There's usually some context there, and that makes it so that 3 weeks from now, when I finish my demos, I can go back and I'd be like, oh yeah, like that actually didn't have the thing that we absolutely need. The other thing that I'll put that I like to put here, so I put pricing and then I also put sales rep quality. I really think that the best sales reps, they can work anywhere. They just show up to a company and they're like, here's my comp plan, here's what I did last year, hire me. And they tend to gravitate towards the companies with the best products because the companies with the best products have the best brands, the highest lifetime value because they have really high retention and therefore they can make the most money. So if you're a salesperson, you want to sell a great product because that is how you're going to get the most bang for your buck, so to speak, in terms of your compensation. Um, the link to the spreadsheet, if somebody wants to scan the QR code and put the link in the chat, I am just multitasking a bit, Joni, and otherwise I can try to follow up with you, or if you want to shoot me a message on LinkedIn, I can drop it later. Um, Kelly, thank you so much. Oh, Kristen's going to do it. Thank you. Um, yes, thanks, Kelly. I appreciate it. Um, here's a tip. Here's a really deep pro tip. After a demo, send your spreadsheet to the vendor and say, hey, did I get all the notes right? Black out all the cells with their competition and your notes for the competition, but keep the competition's name. And basically, each vendor is like, okay, I'm looking at the notes that you took on me to make sure it's right. But also, oh, you're talking to our three biggest competitors. All right, I need to be aggressive on the price. And we've seen people come back with like 20, 30% discounts just from this. And so, like, that's your whole negotiation done for you, which is amazing. Okay, thank you for dropping that link in there. The QR codes, yeah, sometimes they're like the cool kids' way to do things, and sometimes they don't work. Um, but that is like probably one of the best pro tips that I've ever seen in terms of buying HR software. Um, in terms of demos, I think cluster them in a couple weeks. You don't want your brain to have too much time to forget. If you're like me, and I will forget for sure over time, even with notes. Um, Definitely take control. I always liken this to buying a car, and if you go to buy a car, like the person has such an awesome pitch about the vehicle, but you want to zoom in, you want to take them out of their pitch because that's going to get you a higher signal in terms of is this right for me? And then you want to start asking questions related to the features you care about. Do you care about the V6 engine, or like do you want to see how easy it is to take the third seat out when you want the extra space? Same thing with buying HR technology. It's like that's great that it can post to 6,000 job boards, but like we hire nurses and like here are the six job boards we use and here's my current process and like how do you do this in this system? Definitely take really copious notes, fill out that spreadsheet during calls. Coming soon features. I'm always like, is it coming soon? I don't know about that. Highly, highly discount that. And I like to go through all my workflows that I care about. In addition to the stuff that, maybe my head of IT cares about, like SOC 2 compliance, or my CFO cares about like different pricing structures. But I want to see like how is this going to make my life? How's it going to make employees' lives? Is this intuitive or not? Red flags, vague answers. This is such a side note, but I took this awesome class in business school. It was called investment strategies. Every class was a new investment strategy, and one was they had this woman come in who was an ex-CIA agent, and she would go with hedge fund managers to meet with CEOs, and the hedge fund manager would ask the CEO a bunch of questions, and she was like a human lie detector because she'd been a CIA operative for like 20 years, and somebody actually asked like in the class like why are they allowing this like ex-CIA operative into these meetings? And she was like just like the most like plain looking person like you've ever imagined in your whole life. And she's like, oh no, honey, like I'm the flustered lady in the corner who forgot her business card today. And she just looked like somebody's mom that like it's like, oh, what a sweet, sweet woman, right? And she's like this ex-CIA person. But the number one way that you can tell that people are lying, according to her, which I believe, is when they don't give concrete answers. So if you ask about what's the implementation timeline, they're like, it's 3 to 6 months. It's like, okay, well, can you walk me through the steps and why does it make it 3 versus 6? And, how do you guys help? Am I going to get a dedicated account rep? All these things. Um, Features thrown through screenshots rather than live demo. That's a huge red flag. Does it actually work? Is it actually live? I think the Palantir CEO was caught recently, and this is like $100 billion publicly traded company, basically like selling something before it's actually live, which is, a problem, and it happens all the time. Um, Reluctance to really talk about how an integration's set up. There's integrations that are through Zapier, and that can be good enough, but you want to know. And there are integrations where it's like we spent 6 months building this out, and it's seamless and you click a button. Pressure tactics, sign by next week and I can give you a 5% discount, those sorts of things. Usually those are BS anyways. It's like I can still get this discount after 5 weeks. And then, this customer reference thing, that's like a whole nother conversation around how do you run these appropriately. But I think if you can't get a good customer reference, it's like, all right, well, do you deal with healthcare companies? Do you deal with nonprofits, manufacturing companies? That's definitely a big red flag. Um, gonna get into the ROI calculations here, which I personally am like a huge fan of, but I also realize that many people they don't love going through math. And so again, like if you're like, hey Phil, like I'm not following you, please let me know. Um, but basically, this mirrors very much the HR Tech Roadshow where it's the current state of the world. What are the challenges, limitations? What's the value we're going to get from this? Um, and how will this be better than what's currently going on? So I think a lot of it's storytelling, even to this cold-hearted CFO person. And of course, we want to talk about the anecdata around people can't apply. And I went on our career site and this is how terrible it looks, and it's such a turnoff. And here's our talent competitor and like how they're showcasing their employer brand. Um, but I think a lot of it is also about, you know, sharing that data. Industry benchmark is 11% visitor to apply ratio. We're at 3%. So we're literally, 25% of where we should be. That is like we can 4x if we just do a better job. And that's going to lead to massive increases in return on investment. Obviously, be prepared for questions, dynamic calculations, all that stuff. Um, I think that, well, here's what I used to say, and then here's my new answer actually. So I always used to say, find somebody in your organization who's pretty good at numbers. Maybe they have an MBA, maybe they work in FP&A, finance, and just be like, hey, can I take you out to lunch? Here's what we want to do, right? Like our career site is atrocious. We're not getting the applicants. I want to update it. I don't really know how to think about the ROI there. There are certain people who just think in spreadsheet. I don't know why I'm one of them. And if you told me a scenario like that, I would immediately say, oh, okay, so we're increasing the conversion rate of visitor to applicant, which is going to increase the number of applicants. If we have an applicant to hire ratio, that'll be able to tell us what our decrease in cost per hire is. And we could also infer a decrease in time to fill, which translates into dollars as well. And here's how you put that in a spreadsheet. It would probably take 6 minutes. Here's your calculator. I think that's like a great way to do it. We also just built, and I'm gonna caveat this and say this is still in beta version. We just built a GPT for buying HR tech, and so this is trained on like well over 1,000 conversations with HR professionals. What do you like? What do you don't like about your current system? What are you moving to? How much are you paying for it? There's also a bunch of like ROI calculation logic built into it. And so you could be like, hey, can you build me an ROI calculator for a new applicant tracking system? And it would actually build it and give you the spreadsheet, which is like kind of insane. Um, it's in beta. We just launched the beta like 3 weeks ago. So if something weird happens, let me know and I'll help you out. Just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. Um, but this sort of thing is like just so, so powerful when you're meeting with especially executives who are thinking in terms of spreadsheet, EBITDA, revenue. All right, let's do some math. I said 40 minutes. We're right here at 39 minutes. Um, ROI from a new applicant tracking system. This is we're really going to focus on reduced time to fill because I think this is where massive, massive savings can occur. So this is before the investment, and we're just going to pretend like the ATS helps in a few different ways. But let's just say we're mostly hiring salespeople. A new salesperson does $500,000 of revenue in a year. There's 250 work days in a year, and therefore it's $2,000 per day. Let's say our time to fill is 45 days. This is before. After we get the new ATS. The salesperson still does $500,000 a year. There's nothing that changes about a salesperson. There's still 250 working days per year. There's nothing that changes about the number of days you work, and therefore you're still doing $2,000 per day. The change is that instead of taking 45 days to hire the salesperson, it now takes 30 days. And that means that this salesperson has an extra 15 days to be in their job and sell, where we're not out recruiting that rec's not open. So we reduce this by 15 days. Each of these salespeople does $2,000 a day. That's $30,000 of incremental revenue to the company because we're able to get that person in 15 days earlier. If you're doing one of these per month, that's 12 times $30,000, which is $360,000 a year. Maybe you're doing four of these a month, and that number goes up a lot. Salespeople are easy to think about how much they're sort of worth to the business on a daily basis. But my guess is each of us are, on average, worth at least 1.5 to 2x what our all-in compensation is. And if not, then your company's probably misallocating resources pretty dramatically. If somebody isn't bringing in 1.5 to 2x what their salary is, then they're either overpaid or there's something fundamentally wrong with the company. And so that's like a nice shorthand. It's easy to kind of see these numbers from a salesperson perspective, but that's like an easy way to think about it as well. So again, um, we kind of did the value calculation. Now let's think about the cost of a new applicant tracking system. In order to do this, we need a new ATS. Let's say our new ATS is $2,000 a month or $24,000 a year. We already calculated that we're going to generate $360,000 worth of value. We minus the 240. That leaves us with $336,000 of value for our organization. Now there's other costs. There's implementation. Maybe we have maybe there's hard dollar costs, like we have a third party consultant. There's time lost from the HR team, etc. But at the end of the day, like this is such an absurdly compelling number relative to the cost that even if you kind of pick apart this number or you increase this with the other kind of total cost of ownership stuff, it's hard to say no to this sort of analysis. It's really, really hard. I know that listening to math on a slide can be quite confusing. So please let me know in the chat if there's anything that you're just like, I have no idea what you're talking about. And I'm more than happy to go through it in a little bit more detail or try to explain it a different way. There's probably like three more slides and then we'll have time for questions. So also, let us know if there are any questions here. One thing that I really like to do is 6, 12, 18 months after we go through this project, go back to your HR Tech Roadshow PowerPoint, go back to your ROI calculation spreadsheet and see what did you get wrong and what did you get right? Because nobody predicts the future. And maybe it's like this 360 was 3.6 million. Or maybe, time to fill went from 45 to 42, but it was still enough to have a compelling ROI. Or maybe we stopped hiring salespeople because, the business changed, but we still did X, Y, and Z. Whatever the case may be, you almost have like a journal entry with this ROI stuff. And it's so impactful to your own professional development to go back and look at what did you get wrong and what did you get right. It's just like, it's amazing. I also think that this wins the respect of others in your organization, especially if you do like a one pager on like, reflecting on the ATS purchase of 2026. Here was our initial, reason why we did this, our initial calculations, and here's what actually happened. Here's what we learned from it. People are just like, whoa, like that is so thoughtful, and we all learned something from this. That's amazing. Thank you so much. You're also just going to get better as a capital allocator. And I'm a big journaler. I've been journaling since I was a little kid, and like you just look back and you're like, wow, I can't believe I thought that way. One way or the other, right? And you just learn so much about yourself. It's like the most impactful professional development I think that you can do. Okay, that's the presentation. This is, again, another just sort of thing for the Rosie's Place advisor. The link's already in the chat. You can scan this QR code. Basically, if you or a friend need help finding the right software, please use our advisors. It's free. It's rated 4.9 stars, blah, 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 all that stuff. I hope it's very compelling. Save yourself time. Make sure you buy the right software. And then also, I think this is like a cool thing where, get a gift card. That's great. And then you can really feel good about supporting an organization like Rosie's Place. This is my information. I put my LinkedIn at the very beginning, so it's still in the chat there. But feel free to connect with me if you have questions. Whatever. Just want to build your network. Just want to stay connected. Follow the stuff that we're putting out. That's all good. You can just Google me too. I'm the only person out there with this name with two L's. There's another guy with one L. It's like a third cousin of ours whom nobody knew how to write when they came to this country. Um, yeah, that's the presentation. I think we got a couple of questions in the RSVP is my understanding. So I can go through those, or if there's anything in the chat, we can go through those. So
We can leave it open in the chat right now. If anybody has questions, feel free to add those and then we can tackle those as they come in. Or if Phil, you want to pull those questions from the reg.
sure. The first question is, how do I know whether I'm getting a good price from a vendor? It's a good question. So you can use our GPT actually. There's a lot of pricing data in there. You can send me a message. You can ask one of our advisors. I think that on average, you're probably looking for like a 10 to 15% discount if they don't put it on their website. If they list pricing on the website, it's much harder to get discounts. And then if you can really play hardball and kind of pit two people against each other, you might be able to get 20, 30%, especially at different times of the fiscal year. Um, Next question, how do I encourage employees to adopt new HR software? I love stories. I think that they set the norm. So if you're telling stories about, here's how the sales team is using new performance management system, and um, that just reinforces to everybody else, like, oh, people are doing this. It's social proof. Here's how to do it in a narrative. As humans, like we just like understand narratives. Like that's how we, pass along history. That's how we socialize. That's how we understand the world. And so obviously, there's the whole playbook of like this is a new system and blah 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 that your account rep will give you. But I really love the stories to reinforce, especially post implementation. What trends in HR tech are worth investing in 2026? Obviously, there's a lot of buzz around AI and automation. I think that it's actually fairly deserved. There's still demo candy out there that doesn't really work in the real world, but the automation and AI is like probably the biggest reason to upgrade your tech stack in 2026 because you can save so much time and you're taking away the tasks that nobody wants to do that are error prone and like um, yeah, I think with one of these best in class systems, you can just like you can do so much more for your team, your board and C level, and your employees. Are all-in-one solutions a better investment than specialized solutions? I think almost certainly it makes sense to move to all-in-ones unless you're at a large scale. I think your best tech stack is some sort of like core solution that's all in one. And then you probably have like three or four other tools that you need for your organization. So you might want a time and attendance tool that's like really specific to like your type of workforce, or might want an EOR or performance management system or applicant tracking system or a learning management system. But having like the days of having like 10 or 15 solutions, I think are behind us because a lot of these all-in-ones are pretty solid. So um yeah, if there are no other questions, you know, thanks everybody for having me, and I hope it was an impactful solution or part of your day. I hope you took something away from it. And yeah, seriously, if you ever have questions, just feel free to reach out on LinkedIn. And even if it's 3 years from now, stuff like that happens. It's like Phil, We ran into each other at HR Tech like 4 years ago, and I had, XYZ random question. And I always try to help people out. And now with our GPT, honestly, it's like that's like better than any human now at understanding these landscapes and offering good advice. It doesn't always have the context as we know from using these, but our GPT is trained on so much proprietary data. It's crazy.
Well, thanks so much, Phil. We appreciate your time. And again, if you guys have any questions for Phil, definitely reach out to him. But just want to call out to everybody that we do have a post-event survey for this. So once you close out of the Zoom, the survey will automatically appear. It's only 6 questions, but it really helps us, tailor the content. It helps us learn if this was impactful for you to help us, create more content for you in the future. So definitely take that. Should take less than a minute. And we hope to see you at future events. And again, Phil, we really appreciate your time.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.